understand. Yashodanandanam Brajadhanarangana Yashodanandanam Brajadhanaranjana Yamunatira Venkatasari Jaya Radha Kunjabihari Jaya Gopijanavalabha Girivare Yashodanandanam Brajadhanarangana Yamunatira Venkatasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Vidyadvaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथार भागवतन की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः. Hare Krishna. Today we will discuss the verse number 44 from chapter 25th entitled Glories of Devotional Service from Canto 3. So this is the last verse in this chapter and sort of, conclusion of this chapter. So we will discuss. Let's begin by reciting the verse at present. Etavaneva lokesmin pumsham nihashreyasodayah तीव्रेण भक्ति योगेन मनो मय्यर्पितं स्थिरम् एतावान एव लोकेस्मिन् पुंसां निःश्रेयसोदयः तीव्रेण भक्ति योगेन मनो मय्यर्पितं स्थिरम् एतावानेव लोकेस्मिन् पुंसां निःश्रेयसोदयः तीव्रेण भक्ति योगेन मनो मय्यर्पितं स्थिरम्. Okay, Prabhuji's or Mataji's, anyone they want to recite, they can recite. Okay, we will proceed with synonyms, whatever the meaning, translation, and purport by His Divine Grace. Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Word by word meaning, Etavan eva, only so far, loke asmin, in this world, pumsham, of men, nihshreyasa, final perfection of life, udayaha, the attainment of, tivrena, intense, bhakti yogena, by practice of devotional service, manaha, mind, mai, in me, arpitam, fixed, sthiram, steady. Translation. Therefore, persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord engage in the intensive practice of devotional service. I would repeat it. Therefore, persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord, they engage in the intensive practice of devotional service. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Therefore, here the words mano mai arpitam, which means the mind being fixed on me, are significant. One should fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna or his incarnation. To be fixed steadily in that freedom is the way of liberation. Ambarish Maharaj is an example. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. He spoke only on the pastimes of the Lord. He smelled only the flowers and tulasi offered to the Lord. He walked only to the temple of the Lord. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his tongue in tasting the foodstuff offered to the Lord. And he engaged his ears for hearing the great pastimes of the Lord. In that way, all his senses were engaged. First of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord very steadily and naturally. Because the mind is the master of the senses. When the mind is engaged, all the senses become engaged. That is Bhakti Yoga. Yoga means controlling the one second, I lost track. Yoga means controlling the senses. The senses cannot be controlled in the proper sense of the term. Right? They are always agitated. Yeah. The senses cannot be controlled in the proper sense of the term. They are always agitated. This is true also with a child. How long can he be forced to sit down silently? It is not possible. Even Arjuna said, Chanchalang hi manah Krishna, pramati balvadram, right? The mind is always agitated. The best course is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. Mano mai arpitam sthiram. If one seriously engages in Krishna consciousness, that is the highest perfectional stage. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfectional level of human life. The last line is sort of conclusive. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfectional level of human life. Om Jnanatmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kata Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatang Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamsa Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुमदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। Hare Krishna. Okay. So we will discuss. So there are so many important messages given in this purport. Actually, first, Krishna Srila Prabhupada says that the mind has to be fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna, right? And if we we can recollect throughout Srimad Bhagavad Gita, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, either the soul proper itself or mind, right? Mind and intelligence and soul, right? So the level, like it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, right? From the inert matter, better at the body. From the like as a whole body, better, like important or better aspects are the senses. Above the senses is mind, and above the mind is intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul proper, like that, right? So Srila Prabhupada has at some places mentioned that when you engage soul proper, that also like engage your mind, right? Apply your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, right? So it's full of this specific instruction, like this Bhagavad Gita is full of that. So we can remember when the middle 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when it starts, that very first the very first verse, which actually begins with Maya Sakta Manah Partha Yogam Yunjan Madasraya Asansang Samagram Va Yatha Gyasase Tachranu, right? So let's actually see some very important aspect from there, right? So Srila Prabhupada means, let's open the verse, and so I have that open, I think, in front of me. Not this, it should have been 7.1, yes. So here, Mai Asak Manah, right? So attached, your like fully mind attached. See, Asak, actually, Srila Prabhupada has given here mind attached, but this attachment is like Asakti, right? So when Krishna says, apply your mind at my lotus feet, that so he means basically Asakt, like in Hindi or any language where the Asakt word is understood. So Asakt means as a growing youth, right? In the youth, boy and girl, if they're some boy and girl, if they're attracted, right? So that asakti, right? That typically asakti is used there also in the material world sense, right? So asaktamana, it is not just when we are not actively listening, and we are just hearing, right? So there is difference between hearing and listening, right? So how a boy would attentively listen to whatever his like his beloved girl, right? So how he would listen to that girl, right? So in that sense also Srila Prabhupada has explained this, right? Not that we have to be material lusty towards Krishna. It's not about that, but what Srila Prabhupada emphasizes here is that the attachment, pragar asakti, right? The Sanskrit word, if you say. So it's very condensed, very thick, very strong attachment, right? That asakti, asaktamana. So here Srila Prabhupada mentions about this. So we will, see concentration of the mind, somewhere Srila Prabhupada mentions in this. So let's, see those things. Yes, here. This is what I wanted to show. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness is the highest form of all yoga. Right? See, right? By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Right? This point I wanted to share here. today in the beginning. Let me take care of my mobile phone. It's disturbing so much. A second. There seems to be no other way than to switch off. Yeah. So yeah, now I'm free finally. Yeah. So yeah, concentrates of the mind upon Krishna, or in the words, Krishna consciousness is the highest form of all yoga. Further, if we go ahead, later, then we will see here only. Let's see the 9th chapter, last concluding verse, right? Man manabhav madbhakto, right? Let's see the meaning of that. Always thinking of me. How? By through mind, right? Mind's work is, Srila Prabhupada mentions, thinking, feeling, willing, right? So here, right? Always thinking of me, right? Engage your mind always in thinking of me, right? So that is one here, right? Similarly, if we proceed further, I'm just giving some examples, right? As I said in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna, again here, see. This, by the way, chapter 9 is called most confidential knowledge. Chapter 12 is actually called devotional service, right? So Bhakti Yoga. So here, see, actually Krishna mentions in 4 successive, gradual way. So he begins with the highest stage of, absorption in Krishna. And here he begins with Mayi Eva, in me only, not, like 90% in Krishna and 10% in, some Kul Devata or this or that Devata, like that. No, not in Lord Shiva, not in Lord Ganesha, not in Lord Brahma, not in Lord Chitragupta, not in some other personal some deity who is different from Krishna or Vishnu Tattva, right? So in Krishna and Krishna alone, Mai Eva. Here certainly, but many times Srila Prabhupada translates Eva as only in that. Anyway, Mai Eva man adhatso. Keep your mind and intelligence both. Mai buddhing nivesaya, right? Right, both things apply on me. So here, see, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence. Thus, you will live in me always without a doubt, right? So the thing is, and then subsequent steps, Krishna says that if you are not able to think of me always, then you can actually, through the medium of Bhakti Yoga, then try to develop a desire to attain me. That is just the next verse, like that. So he says that Atha chittang samadhatum na saknosi mai sthiram abhyas yogena tato mam ikchaptum dhananjaya. Abhyas yogena, like by the practice of devotional service, right? If you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. That is sadhana bhakti. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. By the way, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in some places, which I don't remember the exact place, but I remember clearly what Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, that by practice of devotional service, by essentially through sadhana bhakti, one can develop prema bhakti. So Krishna also says here, right? Otherwise, if you cannot, that absorption, by the way, the first absorption level, that is typically of, it begins from Prahlad Maharaj, Pandavas, and then Gopis or the Brajavasis in general, right? The genuine Brajavasis, right? So that also we have to understand, not that, just we reach Vrindavan and we get, out of false humility, we surrender to each and everyone, and whom we don't know who is a real true Brajvasi in true sense or not, right? So the Vrajvasis, as mentioned and explained in Shastras, right? As in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Such kind of Vrajvasis, right? So they are always in the rapt thought, or like their mind is completely absorbed in thought of Krishna. That is the 12.8, basically Sloka is referring to that essentially, right? Mayya Manadhas. So Prahlad Maharaj is like that, Pandavas are like that, and Vrajvasis are like that, or devotees in those categories, right? So practically, yeah, it refers to that. So now, question is, how do we apply our mind? How do we fix our mind on the lotus of Krishna, lotus feet of Krishna all the time? Example is given of Ambarish Maharaj, right? So he used all his senses in the service of Krishna, right? So yeah, now the question comes, Ambarish Maharaj, yeah, he dedicated all his time. So now he dedicates all his time, and his kingdom might have been already maintained by his like he delegated everything else to his ministers, but for his own time and his own senses, his own endeavors, right, he applied it fully on Krishna, right? So the thing is, yeah, this chapter is called The Glories of Devotional Service. What is the glory? Glory is that even in like we conditioned soul, right? Parichet, Ambrish Maharaj was a pure devotee, and we are, sadhakas or trying to be sadhakas, right? We are like not all of us are actually also a proper sadhakas. Right? Sadhaka means that who is able to perform devotional service in same, numbers and every day at the same time, same place, same count, right? Essentially, the easiest and the most effective way of applying our mind to Krishna is through the medium of chanting, right? Chanting Krishna's holy name, which is actually Hare Krishna Mahamantra, recommended in this Kali Yuga, right? That Srila Prabhupada has innumerable places. He has referred that chanting is the easiest way to apply even our tongue and mind both, not actually even mind, like essentially our ears and my tongue, right? So it is fully engaged, right? And if we keep on chanting, we definitely, and we are expected, it is expected that we are focusing on holy name, right? And holy name is not different from Krishna. So in that sense, this is the way in this age of Kali that Srila Prabhupada has actually instructed several places and all the places essentially. That's the way we should think about Krishna, right? Now the question would arise that when we chant, our mind actually wanders here and there, right? So this very question was asked when His Holiness Bhakti Bhagavad Swami Maharaj was basically here last year, and he was basically giving his association. So simple question, and Maharaj gave very simple answer. He said, why our mind is distracted? If you're talking to someone very near and dear one, then our mind does not distract, right? Very simple. Because you have a sense of relation, some sort of relationship with that person, right? You know about him or her, right? So the same thing Maharaj said, that we don't know sufficiently about Krishna's glory, Krishna's sweetness, Krishna's pastimes, and how he reciprocates with devotees, right? So the thing is, then the solution comes to that. We don't know enough, about Krishna. So how do we know enough about Krishna, right? That's the next question. Then the answer is by hearing, by reading, right? So see, devotional service actually, there are 9 limbs of devotional service, and it begins with hearing, right? So by hearing, right? So Srila Prabhupada says, so we are hearing. That is one. I'm verbatim, sharing the Srila Prabhupada's purport lecture. Sorry, this is wanted. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended this process, that whatever condition you are in, it does not matter. You simply search out a devotee and hear from him. That is recommended. Iha haya sthane sthita srutigatam tanuvang. So Srila Prabhupada is quoting the verse from 10th canto, 14th chapter, like after Brahma Vimohan Lila, Lord Brahma Hare Krishna. I hope I am audible. Actually, there was internet connection disruption. Sorry for that. Anyway, let's. I hope I'm audible. Can someone please confirm? Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
audible, Guruji. We can
Hare
hear you.
Krishna.
We can
Or you
hear
can
you.
type the message if you are not able to speak. If I am audible. Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji, for confirmation. Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's technology always has limitation. However advanced we go, yeah, that's the thing about material innovation or whatever it is. Yeah. So yeah, sorry for bad disruption. Yeah. So let's actually let me see if my screen is shareable. No, I am not a co-host anymore, but I will speak. Yeah, sure. So the thing is, yeah, the question I was saying that absorption in mind of absorb our mind. How do we absorb it in and the lotus feet of Krishna, right? So I was saying that yeah, means during chanting, our mind wanders here and there, right? So the solution is, as answer was there, we don't know enough about Krishna. The answer to that situation is that we have not, either read or heard sufficiently. As Srila Prabhupada has mentioned many times about sufficiently hearing about Krishna's pastime, right? Sufficiently, so everywhere, so like that. So now, yeah. So the question is, yeah. Now by hearing we can we can understand more about Krishna. So again, so it begins. Srila Prabhupada has mentions about the beginning process, which is hearing. Srila Prabhupada has said that if our hearing is perfect, right, then every other limb, rest of the 8 limbs of devotional service, right, that will become perfect. Whether it's archanam, right, when we do the deity worship, that will also be perfect only if our hearing is perfect. Krishna's pastimes from authorized sources, right? Right. So that's important. So it begins again now in the context of today's chapter, glories of devotional service. So we all know, right? The devotional service has 9 limbs: Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pad Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So Shravanam is the most important, and for in that regard, we will see in Srimad Bhagavatam itself what are the references, right? So first canto itself, second chapter, right, and verse number 17 is very famous, right? Sranvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Sarvana Kirtana Hrdiyanta Sthohi Hrdiyanta Sthohi Abhadrani Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam, right? So it's like Srila Prabhupada translates that Sranvatam, that meaning, see, one word of Srila Prabhupada that they explained in such a sweet way, which we cannot find anywhere and anywhere, right? Sranvatam word is translated by Srila Prabhupada as those who have developed the urge to hear the message of, right? Like people have developed the urge to hear the message of those people, right? To those people, Krishna actually helps those people by vidhanoti suhrit satam, right? So satam means of the truthful devotees. Srila Prabhupada actually mentions that, right? Of the truthful devotees, like who are actually honest, right, with themselves, right? So to those devotees, Krishna helps by specifically cleansing their heart. So cleaning is one thing, and cleansing is different. Cleansing means fully deep cleaning, right? So like a sponge is there, right? If you just it has some dirtiness, and if you try to wash it off in water, you absorb some water and try to squeeze it out, right? So it will actually it will uh, one second. Yeah, so it will actually uh, again, Krishna. Hare Krishna again. Yeah. It's a problem of the natural, this material world. I hope I'm audible again. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of disturbance today. Yeah, like a call, whatever. So yeah, so I was saying that Srinvatam Sokatha Krishna, right? So this by hearing, right, who have the hankering to hear the message of Krishna, to them Krishna actually cleanses their heart from within, right? So that's one glory of hearing, which is devotional service essentially, right? And also releasing also, right? So next, actually, some more examples I will quickly say. Yeah. So basically, that is 1.2.17. Then what is the result of that? Constantly hearing, as long sufficiently hearing, regular every day, at least every day, some dedicated time, we should keep for hearing Krishna's Krishna Katha from either Srila Prabhupada or Srila Prabhupada's bona fide disciples, or parampara, right? Then the next word says 18, Nashta Prayesu Abhadresu Nityang Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So then, we will achieve the stage of Nishtha, right? So this Nishtha means that, fully, now it will not shake, like you will not, abandon the bhakti, like Krishna, devotional service to Krishna by hearing. See, just by regularly hearing, we develop so much, like you would say, Shraddha, Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki, right? So bhakti becomes Naishtik. It wouldn't, deteriorate from that level. That is one thing. 18th. Then there are, three more verses up to 21. Srila Prabhupada mentions these 5 verses together from 17 to 21, right? In the purport of Bhagavad Gita 7.1. So these 5 verses very important. Gives how then you eventually this hearing and then Nashtik Bhakti, devotees come to gradually to the pure mode of pure goodness, and then Bhridyate Hridaya Granth Chedyate Sarva Samsaya, right? All the doubts are dispelled, and essentially, basically the mithya, right, false ego, right? The knot of false ego that is slackened, right, in the heart, right? Or attachment to any other material things, right? So just by hearing, everything else was affected, right? Affected, right? Like that. So, and then further, if we will go further, right? Like how in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned about like hearing is so critical, right? Krishna Katha Amrit. In fact, Krishna Katha is said as Amrit, nectar, not the material world, like a heavenly planet nectar, but the true nectar, right? So yeah, many places, right? Like 2.8.4, again, the questions by King Parikshit, right? So there it is mentioned, Saranvata Sraddhaya Nityam Granatascha Swacheshtitam Kalena Nati Dirghena Bhagavan Vishate Hrdi, right? So it says Parishit Maharaj, actually Parishit Maharaj is saying this verse, not Sukdev Goswami. Many times, if you notice, the verses are like spoken by Parishit Maharaj. Those are actually, it indicates that Parishit Maharaj is already a Mahabhagavata. It is just that, he wanted to hear from pure devotees, another pure devotee, which is Sukdev Goswami. So it's not that Parishit Maharaj was unaware of Srimad Bhagavatam. In some, when Gajendra Moksha comes, if you scrutinizingly read those slokas, maybe first chapter or second chapter, I think first chapter and somewhere, it's kind of first chapter, So it is evident from that Parikshit Maharaj already knew Gajendra Moksha Katha, but he says that I want to hear from you, means hear from Sukdev Goswami. So it's not that Parikshit Maharaj was unaware, but hearing is such a nectarian and truly blissful experience that pure devotees and honest devotees, they want to hear it again and again from, again, they want to hear it from pure devotees or very advanced devotees, right? Progressive on the path of, on the way to pure devotees, right? So, yeah, so we were discussing about hearing, the potency of hearing, right? So, yeah, hearing like Srinvata Sraddhaya Nityam, who's here with Shraddha Nityam, like every day, or, there is a routine, it's not ad hoc, right? That's the important thing. Highest level of Nityam is like Parishit Maharaj, right? 24/7. But we cannot imitate that. We have our limitations. So at least some schedule routine should be there, right? So Srila Prabhupada, he began from 24 hours, and then he says that at least 12 hours. Then in some places he said at least 6 hours, and finally he says at least 3 hours. But at least Acharya said, yeah, or at least 1 hour, right? Or active listening, right? With full concentration. So these are recommended, right? So if Sranvata Sraddhaya Nityam, Granatascha Swacheshtitam, voluntarily accepting the instruction given in those hearing, right? that is Swacheshtikam. Kalena nati dirghena, no ati dirghena, not very long time, right? Kal like time. Kalena nati dirghena, Bhagavan vishate hadi. So Bhagavan, the Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, he enters the heart of such devotees in very short time, right? Very short time. So that is the meaning of this 2.8.4. And next he says, Parishit Maharaj also repeats, essentially conveys the same meaning as it was mentioned in 1.2.17, right? Saranvatam Sogatha, right? So same thing he said in 2.8.5. The chapter is titled Questions by King Parikshit, second canto. So here it says, Pravishta Karana Randhrena, Swanang Bhava Saroruham, Dhunoti Shamlam Krishna, Salilasya Tha Sarat, like that. So, like that. So, again, he cleanses. By entering through the medium of ear, channel of ear, he then cleanses, right? He cleanses our heart, right? Pravishta Karana Randhrena, Swanang Bhava Saroruham, Dhunoti Shamlam Krishna, Salilasya Tha Sarat, right? So, this we heard. Further again, if we go, when Dhruva Maharaj, he was, in trance, he was meditating on Lord Vishnu, and finally when Lord Vishnu appeared there, and he gave the causeless mercy to Dhruva Maharaj, by touching his console to his forehead. So some places Kapola is mentioned as forehead, some places it's mentioned as cheeks. Anyway, so the thing is, when Lord Vishnu gave the causeless mercy to Dhruva, and Dhruva started offering prayers, it is mentioned as conclusive and deliberate prayers to Lord Vishnu, right? Not just, in haste or something quickly, not like that. Without haste, that is also mentioned. Asattvaram. Tvaram means fast. Asattvaram means, not in a haste, not in a hurry, like that. Conclusive and deliberate prayers. There, the middle of the sloka, right? The middle verse, right? 4.9.11. There it's mentioned that Bhakting Muho Pravatang Toime Prasango, and he concludes that with Neshe Bhavad Guna Kathamrita Panamatta. He says, it will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are eternally existent. So Krishna is eternal, and like all souls are also eternal, and Krishna's pastimes are also eternal, right? So his transcendental qualities and pastimes, these are eternal, right? So he says, Neshe Bhavad Gun Katha Amrit Pan Mattaha. I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes. See, so Dhruva Maharaj says. Further, actually, if we go to 7th canto, where Prahlad Maharaj is offering prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev, there also he says, Tvada Virya Gayana Kathamrita Magna Chitta. So he says, I am not at all afraid of material existence. For wherever I stay, I am fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. See, his mind is absorbed. So as I was saying, that Prahlad Maharaj, Pandavas, and Brajavasis, bona fide Brajavasis, they are fully absorbed in thought of Krishna. So he says, to the Vidya Gayan. So he is absorbed in pastimes of or glories and activities, pastimes of Lord Nrsimhadev or Lord Krishna, right? So actually, Prahlad Maharaj was able to, see Krishna's, not just, other form of Krishna. No, actually, he was able to see Krishna's child pastimes, right? Babyhood and child, like Bala Leela in Vrindavan. So Prahlad Maharaj was able to visualize that as it is. And because of that, sometimes seeing Krishna's humorous or funny activities, he used to smile, or suddenly he used to start laughing like that, as if, he has become mad or what. So like that. So when Krishna is stealing butter, right, from a gopi's house, and he sees his own reflection in a pillar, right, shining pillar, right, and then he thinks someone else has come, and other boy from that household has caught him stealing, right, and Krishna starts, bribing that boy, thinking that he's some other, but reflection is also of Krishna, right? And the butter falls off, from the pillar. Krishna tries to bribe by giving the butter that, okay, you also take, please don't, reveal to anyone that I am stealing. But it's a reflection, so the butter falls from the pillar, right? And then Krishna becomes angry, and then he goes from there. Okay, whoever you wants to complain, up to you, like that. So by seeing such behavior, some such activities of Krishna live, right? Krishna. So Prahlad Maharaj was as if he was participating in those pastimes, and he used to laugh. And gopis of Vrindavan, they were hiding and they were looking at such acts of Krishna, and they were laughing. And Prahlad Maharaj is present in those pastimes, and he's laughing. So it's mentioned that he was so absorbed in these leelas, not just some other forms of Krishna, like in some Vishnu form or other, but Prahlad Maharaj was able to see and participate and relish those pastimes as first-hand experience, right? So Prahlad Maharaj is fully, his heart and mind is fully absorbed in Krishna's pastimes, right? So again, so we can also derive the same benefit as provided we hear or read the book, the purports written by Srila Prabhupada. If we hear those or read those carefully and hear the pastimes by great acharyas, we will also be able to relish Krishna's pastimes, and we will also be able to fix our mind by hearing those pastimes. And when we chant, but after we have sufficiently heard and read about Krishna's pastimes, then our mind will not wander to some material things or thoughts. So then either we will be able to focus on Krishna's name fully, or some glimpse of pastimes, like some things which we have read or heard, mind will go to that. Right? That is not considered a negative thing. We don't have to artificially, force our mind to think of some pastime of Krishna during our chanting. But if mind naturally goes to such pastimes, then it is considered positive only, right? So, but that will happen only when we have sufficiently heard. Now the question is, next question, which I bring many times in my discussion, that how do we develop a taste for hearing about Krishna, hearing Krishna Katha, right? So the answer comes to, basically in several places in Bhagavatam it is mentioned already, that sadhu sangha is the most important, right? That gives us, actually we say, we begin with Shraddha. I found out by hearing from acharyas that Shraddha is also caused by some mercy, causeless mercy of some sadhu, either in this life or some previous life. If a sadhu, genuine bona fide sadhu, has basically we have done some service or something, and the sadhu was pleased or is pleased to us, and because of that we develop Shraddha to Krishna, right? That's so Shraddha is also actually caused by second stage only, which is sadhu sangha or mercy of sadhu, and then we again go to back to some bona fide sadhu, and then bhajan kriya starts, right? Now again the thing is, the question is, how do we develop faith? If someone has not done any particular or a specific, credible service to sadhu, what happens, right? So that's where the role of preacher comes, right? So advanced devotees or sincere devotees, when they have themselves have, received grace of some, causeless mercy of some great Vaishnava, and then they actually start preaching by their empowerment, like Srila Prabhupada's disciples, right? We hear, and they start preaching, and they come to, several people, and they actually they give the swikriti and other things, swikriti essentially to, people who don't have swikriti, right? So that is one way of, developing Shraddha, right, towards Krishna, sadhu and Vaishnava and Krishna, Vishnu, right? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, Krishna bhakti janma mula haya sadhu sangha, Krishna prema janme teho punah mukhya anga. So even, before or when we start our devotional service journey, then also sadhu sangha is the root of that or cause of that. Even when, let's suppose, we reach the level of Krishna prema, right? Theoretically, like practically, it's not so cheap, right? So after a lot of effort, let's suppose someone reaches Krishna prema level, even then, teho punah mukhya anga, even then at that level, sadhu sangha is the root of maintaining that or increasing that. Actually, Prahlad Maharaj says to Lord Nrsimhadev that how can I give up my spiritual master's association and, just selfishly go to spiritual world, now thinking that my spiritual master, essentially Narad Muni, right? He was just a means to go to a spiritual world. No, he says, how can I live his association eternally or ever? I wouldn't leave his association like that, right? So that's a thing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has mentioned. Krishna prema janme teho puna mukhya anga, sadhu sangha, essentially, right? And the basically, I would conclude with the key to this. How do we develop attachment or interest to hear Krishna Katha? All along, I have said that by hearing we develop attachment to Krishna. Question comes, how do we develop the taste to hear or chant, both, right? So in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam itself, first canto, second chapter, it is mentioned, second chapter, 16th verse. That's Susrso Shraddha Dhahanasya Vasudev Katha Ruchihi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipraha Punya Tirtha Nishevana. Right? So it says that a great service is done by serving those devotees who have, who are like great devotees themselves, right? Shraddha Dhahanasya Vasudev Katha Ruchi. If we serve great devotees of Krishna, then we develop taste in Vasudev Katha. Vasudev Katha Ruchi, right? Then we develop Vasudev Ruchi in Vasudev Katha. 1.2.16. You can refer and go through the purport on your own. It's very important, and it's a cycle breaker sloka, in the sense we say that we will be purified by doing bhakti, but we are in conditioned state. We don't have the taste to do devotional service. So how can we be pure? This sloka actually breaks the cycle, that how to get out of this perplexity. So this is, we have to render service to great devotees. What sort of devotees, right? That Shukdev Goswami answers in 6th canto, beginning, first chapter. So this context is, Parikshit Maharaj is asking, Shukdev Goswami, after hearing, hearing the descriptions of Naraka, right? The hellish planets, right? So the cycle which Shukdev Goswami was mentioning, that people, they commit sinful activities, and then they have to suffer in one of the hellish planets. And then when they are purified, then they are given birth in some species, and then they gradually evolve to, essentially, that's not mentioned literally there, but we know from Srila Prabhupada's books that they will come to human form of life after long evolutionary process, right? Anyway, so Parikshit Maharaj asked that, what's the use of to avoid a Naraka or hellish planet, one can perform atonement. Then Parikshit Maharaj says that, what's the use of such atonement if the person actually, he or she again commits sinful activity? Then Shukdev Goswami says, so, to control senses and all these things, he says, tapasa brahmacharyena shamena cha damena cha, like control of mind and control of sense, right? That is samena and damena, right? And do austerity, celibacy, all those things. But Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in that slokas, that is 13 and 14, I suppose, 6.1.13 and 14. So in the purport towards the end, Srila Prabhupada says, no, even just by doing austerity and other things to control sense and mind, it is not sufficient. Because it is like, when there is a forest fire, then the creepers and the, trees, trunk and other branches, they get burnt off, but which is above the ground. Below the ground, under the, surface, the roots are still there, dormant. And when it rains, again, they actually flourish, right? So then next verse, he says, 15th verse, 6.1.15, Srila Prabhupada says, केचित् केवलया भक्त्या वासुदेव परायण अघं धुन्वन्ति कार्त्स्नेन निहारम एव भास्करा, right? So he says the root or the inner inclination to commit sinful activity, that will go away only when we are fully Vasudev Parayan, when we fully engage our mind, senses, everything, intelligence in Krishna. Now the thing is, it's again cycle, right? So we say that, to purify, we have to actually become Krishna conscious, but we have so many anarthas, right? How will it go away? One answer was like, nashta prayasu abhadreshu, right? That if you dearly hear Bhagavatam. Again, the thing is, because our anarthas don't permit us to hear or read Bhagavatam. As 1.2.16, that was the key sloka, you have to, offer service to great devotees of Krishna, great Vaishnavas, right? Then you will develop Vasudeva Kasaruchi. Parallel to that, the final verse comes here, final in the terms of, conclusive meaning, the 6.1.16, there actually Sukadeva Goswami reveals, same as 1.2.16. That was spoken by Sudha Goswami, right? Here Sukadeva Goswami originally says that, na tatha hi aghavan rajan puyet tap adi Krishnarpit pranas tat purusha nishevaya. He says that all the anarthas, right, that can be, eliminated. It can be eliminated only through the process of, service to such devotees who have, who have given up their prana sakti, or essentially their life, who have dedicated their lives for the service of Krishna, right? Na tatha. So, anarthas are not cleansed by any process as it is cleaned by the process of serving those fully dedicated Vaishnavas. Simple words we can say like that. Na tatha hi aghavan rajan. Who is full of sin, like Dhanwan, right? Full of riches. So aghavan is full of sinful acts or sinful reactions, right? Na tatha hi aghavan rajan. Rajan is addressing Parishit Maharaj. Pujet tap adi. Pujat means getting purified. Tap adi. He includes every other corollaries. Tapa, celibacy, all this, control, artificial hatha yoga, this or that. Yatha, as it is cleansed by Yatha, Krishna arpit pranas. Those devotees who have dedicated their, offered their very lives to Krishna, right? Yatha Krishna arpit pranas tat purusha nishevaya. By serving such devotees, the anarthas go, it gets cleared up fastest. This is the fastest way. Yeah. So we have to seek such devotees. And there are several such devotees fortunately in ISKCON. Outside also there might be, many bona fide like other Vaishnava lineage also. But if we already have it readily available, such great Vaishnavas who have dedicated their lives for preaching the glory of Krishna, why not to, take the readily available opportunity rather than, again, going on a trip to find out such Vaishnava, and then try to use our intelligence. No, why do we need to do that? We already have many, dedicated devotees in ISKCON Parampara. Outside also, we don't need to disrespect them, but we already have such a bona fide Vaishnava Parampara available here. We can take advantage of that. When we come across such devotees, we should hear from them, we should serve them. It can be, doing some personal seva to them, serving them by the prasad, fruits, or this or that. They're traveling, they're traveling devotees preaching, they keep on preaching at different places. We can help their preaching missions, right? Maybe distributing shastra. There are so many ways, which pleases our own respective spiritual masters and Srila Prabhupada and all the Vaishnavacharya Parampara, right? So by serving them, we actually, clear our anarthas fastest, and then we, also develop taste Vasudeva Katha Ruchi, right? Vasudeva Katha, taste in Vasudeva Katha, Krishna Katha, and by hearing in association of devotees, genuine bhakti, Nashtik bhakti develops, right? As in this chapter itself, Lord Kapil Dev says, right? We have to search for such sadhus, right? And the description of such sadhus were mentioned already in 20th verse and 21st verse, right? 20th verse it says that the same attachment which we have to material things, that attachment tendency, mind's tendency, we have to place in sadhus. Next verse, 21st verse, Lord says that, the famous Titikchava Karunika, Suhrida Sarvadehinam, Ajasatrava Shanta, Sadhava Sadhubhushana. So, yeah, Titikcha Karuna, right? Karuna is, what is the actual meaning of Karuna? That sadhu knows that the root cause of all suffering for every living entity in this world is that they are away from Krishna, right? Krishna Vimukha, right? That's the main root cause, and that's the reason like the sadhu, he preaches Krishna's, Krishna Katha to all the conditioned souls, right? And this preaching, actually, see, one thing to notice in description of sadhu by Lord Kapil Dev is, he has not mentioned gender, that he has to be a male person. No, he has not mentioned gender. He has not mentioned the color of the dress. He has not mentioned the ashrama. A sadhu is not bound or defined by such externalities. Sadhu can be, a very nice Mataji who is performing very nice sadhana, right? And fully, on the side of Krishna, essentially, if we say in a basic layman language, on the side of Krishna, right? And he or she wouldn't leave Krishna ever, right? That's a sadhu. It's not, brahmachari, grihastha, vanprasanyasi, or, brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra. No. None of these qualifications, varnashram level has not been attributed to the definition of sadhu. Bhagavad Gita introduction itself, Srila Prabhupada mentions the discussion between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu encouraged Ramananda Rai to share something. What is the best thing for best for human beings, right? So he begins from any level, he goes to Varnasrama, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no, speak further. Then finally, when he comes that, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, yes, savai pumsam paro dharma. Essentially, these kind of things, right? Unmotivated, devotional service, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna. This is not defined or contained or restricted by varna or ashrama or male or female body or color of the dress, right? So finally, in the Association of Sadhu, the defining how the flow goes, as Lord himself has mentioned, tatang prasangang mama virya samvido bhavante hrit karna rasayana katha tadjosanad aso pavarga vartmani sraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. So in the association of pure devotees of Krishna, then the past narration of pastime of Krishna is very relisable to the ear and heart both. Sometimes we may not, the language may be different, which we don't understand. But out of respect, we should, we should not ignore that. If on Yatra, for example, when I go and then I see that the senior devotee is speaking in Kannada, even then we should fully attentively, we should be there and try to grasp as much as possible, right? So it is still pleasing to the ear, even if the meaning is not clear, right? That's the meaning of Satang Sangamam video Samido Bhavante Hrit Karna Rasayana Sada, right? So if the meaning is not clear, even then it will be pleasing to the ear if we are ourselves sincere, right? And the meaning is clear, then it is realizable in the heart also, right? So Bhavante Hrit Karna Rasayana. So after that, Tadjosanadasu apavarag vartmani, Shraddha Ratir, Shraddha, then Ratir, then Bhakti Anukarmishati. In that order it follows, right? So again, the whole thing, conclude what I was, trying to convey or proposing overall in this session was that devotional service is very glorious. It can uplift us from this difficult or painful material condition to the constitutional position of the soul, which is being eternal servant of Krishna in the spiritual world. And to trigger that or to begin the journey on that path, we perform devotional service. And like hearing is the most important process, hearing Krishna Katha, and we can develop taste in hearing by serving great devotees of the Lord. That's the whole message. Anyone has any question, they could ask. Otherwise, we could conclude here. Hare Krishna. Okay. Looks like we don't have any question. So we can stop here. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.